Well, firstly, many things can be happening at the same time. I think that's important. I don't think this is a choice between people's revolution, color revolution. I think this becomes too simplistic. It's a very complicated, fast-moving scenarios in all these countries. Firstly, it's true that in Sri Lanka, whatever the character of the protest movement a few years ago, it is true that the beneficiary of this was the United States. United States essentially plucked Ranil Wickremesinghe, who had one seat in the Sri Lankan parliament, one seat himself. His party had one seat, and he was ascended to prime minister. He takes over the reins of the country with one seat. How does he do that? US Embassy intervenes. There was a protest, whatever the character of the protest. Some people say, well, it was all fake. Whatever it was, it doesn't matter. The beneficiary in Sri Lanka was the United States because they put, in a sense, the sections of the Sri Lankan political establishment that wanted to have more trade with China on the back foot. Now, this is not going to last forever. It's likely at the next election, the JVP is going to be the biggest party. If the JVP is the biggest party, that is going to move the needle of Sri Lanka toward the left. We'll see what happens. These things aren't permanent. They go in various forms of cycles and so on. Pakistan was second. In Pakistan, certainly there was a lot of exasperation in the United States over Imran Khan's dealing with the Russians, not the Chinese. The Chinese situation goes back a very long time, but certainly with the Russians, Imran Khan was taking a strong position that you shouldn't condemn Russia. In fact, he was there on the day that Russian troops entered Ukraine. Now, was he removed in a coup? It doesn't matter. He was removed. The beneficiary of the removal of Imran Khan was the United States, because when the so-called alliance comes in, the two old parties, the Bhuttos and Nawaz Sharif's family, the Sharif family, these are two big families. When they came in together, they basically welcomed the US generals back in town. So the beneficiary was definitely the United States, regardless of how this happened, regardless of the situation. In Nepal, it's interesting. Prachanda, his government wasn't anti-US. It was more worried about the role of India was playing in Nepal. But at the same time, United States worked a deal called the Millennium Challenge Corporation, where they got the Nepali parliament, majority communist parliament, to vote for a deal where Nepal puts in a lot of money into building an electrical power line to India. Okay, enormous amount of money. Nepal puts in US investment, minimal in this, in the hundreds of millions. It's nothing for what they're getting. And this is in the Prachanda period. Both the Maoist Center and the Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Socialists, voted for the MCC in their own parliament. This is a problem. But through parliamentary machinations, KP Oli, who was the head of the Unified Marxist-Leninist, which is the more right wing of the Communist parties, more right side of the parties, made a deal throughout the Maoist Center from the prime ministership. Oli is now the prime minister. Oli is certainly more willing to listen to the United States. Other people go further than me, but let's just stay there, than Prachanda was. So now in Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Nepal, you have relatively more pro-US governments than you had before. Well, Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina has been there since 2009, was certainly making some interesting moves regarding China and even Russia and India and so on. Always had a close tie with India. She was very unpopular with a large section of students for a long time over this quota issue. This goes back, to 2013, in fact, to 2008. The quota issue was raised as a political issue before Sheikh Hasina came to power. But during her time in power, there were two contradictory things happening. There was the arrival of a mass sentiment saying no quotas any longer. Only 10% of the quotas are for the children, descendants of the freedom struggle. The rest are for women, the disabled, people from marginal parts of Bangladesh and so on. There are quotas up to 50%, but only 10% was for beneficiaries through the freedom struggle. what Sheikh Hasina said is those who were against this quota were Razakars, meaning they were the people who had committed the genocide in 71. And you will know that in 2013, there was a massive demonstration at Shahbag in Dhaka, where people came out to demonstrate against the Razakars, saying that they need to be prosecuted. Their leader, one fellow who killed 342 civilians, needs to be killed, not sent to life imprisonment. He was eventually killed. In Shahbag, the quota thing was raised in an opposite direction. It was, should it be defended against these people? So this political turmoil has been there for a long time. Sheikh Hasina's problem is that she could not tolerate dissent and was shutting down dissent everywhere, going after photojournalists, going after writers, closing down media houses. And when the students protested in 2018, when there was a bus that rammed and killed two students on safety, her response was again repression. And I think it's really this cycle of repression that was her undoing. She just lost popularity, even though she may not have lost the debate. I think that's important for, to put on the table, that the question of who is going to come after her was not so settled. This was not an uprising of Islamist students against a secular government. This was a very complicated uprising. Most of the people who became part of the student movement were not necessarily from the Jamaat student organizations. They would have been from the BNP student organizations, the Bangladesh National Party. There were even people on the streets from the Awami League student organization, because otherwise they would just lose their credibility. But it is true that 2 days after Sheikh Hasina gets on a flight and goes to Ghaziabad in India, there was a meeting at the US Embassy where various forces were invited to come and have a conversation about what happens next. It is also true that the students, trying to protect themselves from the military, hastily put forward Muhammad Yunus's name. It's also, in other words, they didn't think about what his politics are. They were trying to protect this process from military takeover. That was a tactical thing that they did. But it's also true that the cabinet that's there now is pretty appalling. I mean, there's lots of names from the past there. They put a couple of student leaders up, but I must say, it's not an impressive list of people in the cabinet. So all kinds of things can be true. It's not like the US government in a country the size of Bangladesh, right? What is it? 160 million people, 180 million, something. It's a very large country. It's not, a country of 10 million as Chile was in 73, 10, 12 million. It's a very large country. It's very hard to do a coup of a classical sort in a country like this, where so many interests are at play. The United States doesn't have a free run. On the other hand, it is true that they are going to benefit from this, that it is likely that the government that comes into Dhaka is going to be decidedly more pro-US. It's going to be decidedly more anti-Indian. And I think this is creating a lot of concern in India, that the United States is meddling in what India considers its neighborhood, putting in more anti-India governments in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bangladesh, and trying to encircle India. This is the reason why the former diplomat M.K. Bhadrakumar put out a tweet saying, I'm warning you, this is happening. I don't want to exaggerate that. I mean, I think, again, many things can happen. You can have authentic movements, but the beneficiary is a certain person, not you, who sacrificed in the movement. Remember, the students very early started to say that those who sacrifice should be sitting in government house, not the military or the Bangladesh National Party. But, you can say whatever you want. This is a power struggle. This is not a legal issue. You can't go to the courts and sue somebody and say, listen, I was the principal person who worked on the overthrow of Sheikh Hasina. I want to have a court case against this person. He sat at home the whole time and now he's the Minister of the Interior. You can't, it doesn't work like that. This is a power struggle, not a moral or legal struggle. And in many of these cases, whether the demonstrations were authentic or not, they really lost the power struggle to those who are much more powerful and better at maneuvering in taking reins of the situation. So as I say, I think this debate is, in fact, it's a debate that needs to go to a different level. That you need to bring these two together and in a Hegelian way, transcend the duality between people's revolution and color revolution and see it for what it is, which is a kind of combination of all kinds of things.
I asked this question primarily for two reasons. I mean, in some cases, I feel that the evidence of a color revolution becomes much more clear. Like when one thinks about the Maidan coup, for instance, the evidence is much more overwhelming and much more clear. And those who organized it were very, very clearly right-wing, that it becomes easier to take a position. Then there are cases where the change of regime or government doesn't come through popular protest. Sometimes the legal mechanisms are used, a court case, a corruption charge, sometimes with the blessing of military in the case of Pakistan. But then there are these cases like the case of Sri Lanka and more recently in Bangladesh, where a popular protest is involved. And when that happens, I do often try to listen to people on the ground, including the left on the ground. And when I try to listen to people in Bangladesh, including the left, they are concerned about the future role of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, but more importantly, the role of Jamaat. They are concerned about minority rights. They are concerned about neoliberal policies. They are concerned about the role of India, but they don't talk a lot about as if this is a color revolution, which a lot of leftists in the international space are talking about. And so that was why I asked this question to you. And I don't think you are doing that, but sections of the left, which I don't want to mention here, I think are just saying that this is color revolution.
Hi, my name is Ayushman. I, along with Jyotisman, have started this platform. In the last 2 years, we have tried to build content for the left and progressive forces. We have interviewed economists, historians, political commentators, and activists so far. If you have liked our content so far and want us to build an archive for the left, I have two requests for you. Please do consider donating for the cause. Link is in the description below. Also, if you are not able to do so, don't feel sad. You can always like our videos and share our videos to your comrades. Finally, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.